Very pleased to be joining you virtually, and thanks to James for his presentation. It's good to see that I'm not the only one scratching his head trying to solve some of the issues around additionality out there. But today I'm here to talk about the history of JLL's renewable purchasing for our own offices and for our clients as well, and have a quick look at some of the future options that we're getting, the next steps, especially around the net zero equation. So without further ado, next slide, please. Just a quick little note about JLL and what we do. If you want more details, please do look at our website. But the bit of JLL that I work for is where your pensions or your life insurance or whoever owns offices and shopping centres. They don't occupy them, but they own them. My job is to make sure that you get value for money for the tenants in that building, where the bill is in the landlord's name. But one of the clients that we look after is ourselves, JLL, and that's the next bit of the equation. So next slide, please. So Building a Better Tomorrow is our umbrella of sustainability program, and we're very proud of what we're doing here. Workplaces is the bit where I spend most of my time, and that's buying the energy for the offices, our own offices, and also client properties. So it's very much the scope 1 and 2 as per James did, and when we're talking about electricity, that'll be the scope 2. And we do this for ourselves and for our clients, and we've set ourselves various ambitions, and one of those was about buying renewable electricity and renewable energy. I make the distinction, but today I'm talking primarily about electricity, or almost exclusively about electricity. So next slide, please. Now, our target was to have 100% renewable on all of our properties that we occupy by 2030. We've managed to hit it by 2020, so we're very pleased to do that. And it falls into different categories, some of which are more straightforward to deal with and some are a little bit more tricky. The direct purchase ones, no surprise to understand here, as we're buying it ourselves, we define the sort of REGO or sustainability renewable credentials that we want to see. For our bigger sites, all of our half-hourly ones are with our host here, Smartest. So that's very good, and we were very pleased with the Smartest product range and its accreditations to Carbon Trust standards. That's been a great comfort to us, and so on. For the non-half-hourly suppliers, it's with a smaller electricity supplier, but still on REGO based. I'll be talking a little bit later on about the progress in the direct purchasing. For the indirect purchasing, it's a bit trickier. This is where, along with many corporates, we're tenants in buildings. So it's lovely if you've got your own building and that's all you've got, but many corporates will have office space that they rent and they lease. So trying to hit your renewable targets when you're dealing with the landlord is the person buying your energy can make it very tricky. It's one of the things we've found. So we have the luxury of being in the property sector. So in some instances, our landlord was our client. So again, we are involved in purchasing the energy. That was quite straightforward. But the challenge for our Building a Better Tomorrow team, and they did really well with it, was to engage with the landlords who weren't our clients to understand when their contracts were up for renewal and to when they were up for renewal to get them onto renewable energy contracts. And that can be an uphill struggle. One of the things that the net zero agenda has done has made that job a lot easier. We've been doing it for a while now, and it's been getting easier because of net zero. It's not completely straightforward, but we're not the only tenants in the building, so sometimes there is some resistance. The other thing that has been fundamental in what we do with our renewable targets for our offices is green lease clauses. So when we are looking for new space, and there's been announcements recently, we will always now include, we need to have renewable energy as standard. Either we are allowed to buy it on our own behalf, or where the landlord is buying it, it is written into our lease contract that the landlord will provide us with green energy. It's been a tough ask, but we've done it. So our Building Better Tomorrow team, we've been able to lead. We've done it for ourselves, and we've shown our clients that we can do it. We've learned some of the tricky moments firsthand and challenges, and also how we can overcome. And it's been also very much a clear customer signal to the market, whether that be electricity suppliers, corporates take this very seriously. And again, the mindset of that is changing. Net zero, all of those companies that James mentioned there, and others like them, are starting to ask that of their landlords. So it makes it very clear that that's happening. What I want to do next is talk about how we've changed things over time with our direct purchasing. So if we can do the next slide, please. Yay, good stuff. So for the older hands amongst us, you will remember climate change levy. That's exempt green energy. That's how we used to buy our green energy. And then the rules changed a little. We were with Smartest at the time, and they were one of the first out the blocks with the REGO backed, the change to the REGO backing rather than the CCL exemption certificates. And as I mentioned, it was accredited to the Carbon Trust standards, so that gave us a great deal of comfort that we were talking credible renewable energy sources. We did that for ourselves and also our client base, and we moved to the smartest product called Natural Renewables, which is what I call the photonic renewables, the ones that look good on the brochure, the wind, the solar and the hydro, and moved less so the ones which were burning combustion of any sort. There's still REGO, but we wanted to be absolutely clear, we want wind, solar and hydro. So that was an initial bit, and we were on a par with our clients. And then for our own offices, we took the decision to move to the next level up, which is because REGO's saying not just the type of generation, but the asset it comes from. We've been able to do with through Smartest, we've been able to get our REGO's source from a single generator, a particular solar farm. So we know that our energy demand is purchased through the wholesale market, but it is matched off with REGO's from that one asset. It's not additional, but it is definitely renewable energy. But that's given us that's the journey we've done so far. And then we've had the change that has come through with net zero. That's given actually up the ante, as it were. People going, well, what next? You're buying green, but that's great, but how do you do next? What's the next thing? And that's around the additionality. And that's where we come for the next slide. Next slide, please. So, as was mentioned, I contributed to the UK Gbc Net Zero Hierarchy, this representation of it. And it's saying, yes, you've got your standard green tariffs, but you can do more. They're not particularly additional, and it's true, it's not additional, but I need the energy now, so I'm going to be buying green energy tariffs now. And over time, we have moved through to a better quality of those green tariffs. But for the future, we have, as Mead corporates, you kind of look and go, what are our options? So we could do our own site generation, except we have constraints. We don't own the site, and the site is in the centre of London, or it's in a place where actually we couldn't put enough generation on site to meet the demand of the site. So it would only be an exemplar, but still it's something we want to consider and look at, because an exemplar is something you can point to and have a discussion about, and it's actually showing what's going on. So, but for us in the short, immediate term, an on-site renewable, anything bigger than just essentially an exemplary small one would be difficult for us to do. So we looked at the next level down, corporate PPAs, and it's very interesting to hear some of the things that James was saying. The corporate PPAs, actually, the credit rating is one of the things that you look at. For the property sector, it's going to be a big problem, because whilst JLL might what JLL does have a good credit rating, a lot of the entities in the property sector, the way they are structured means they struggle to get a UK credit rating. So actually the requirement from the finance people who want to back the PPAs that it has to be extremely high grade credit rating is actually a barrier to wider take up of the smaller market. So there's that. The other one is the thresholds that we're looking at, and it's the scale of the thing. If you're looking at a PPA that is essentially a utility scale PPA, it is very off-putting for someone whose primary business model is not buying energy. So that's another area to look at. And then the other area that we considered was the duration. 10 years duration, it's down from 25, which would have been absolutely a non-starter, but it is coming down, so I'm very pleased to see that. But even so, determining now what our energy demand is for the next 10 years is a risky business. Plus, under the net zero, we're setting ourselves efficiency targets, so we are driving down the amount of energy we want to use per meter squared. So almost guaranteed, I don't want to buy in 10 years time the same amount of energy that I'm buying now. So I don't want to do a PPA for 100% of my volume. So I'm not going to, but I need to pick a lower threshold. And then if we're not doing the corporate PPA for all of the energy, you're still going to have something left. Then you're looking at high quality green tariffs. For UK GBC, they were defining that at the supplier level, so that the supplier is 100% green, not the market level contract that is being signed by the tenant, so it's or by the off-taker. So it's quite an interesting bit of debate to have there. But again, we want to try and move further into those areas and engage with suppliers around how that can be done credibly. Ring fencing of the REGOs, that's more, okay, we're buying REGOs from a solar farm, but we're not buying the energy from them. And actually, if we did buy the energy from the solar farm, if we bought 100% bundled REGOs from our solar farm, it would be difficult. We would push a risk back over to our suppliers and our generators, because at night, they're going to have to buy the energy from someone else to give it to us at the price we've been agreeing. So, but the market mechanisms are there already. They exist in the market to buy the energy. But again, if you're doing 100% of your bundling, it makes it very difficult. So these are the challenges that we face. And I think maybe if there should be one more bit to that, which is the standard green tariffs. But so we've moved on from those standard green tariffs. We are moving up the agenda. But all in all, the next stage is unlikely to be any one of those. It's most likely to be a patchwork, a little bit of that, X% of the portfolio this way and a little bit more that way. And over time, we are working towards the 2030 target to get more stuff in. Some of it will have to wait until our next pricing cycle. Some of it will have to wait until our next contracting cycle. But we are putting down what that timeline will look like. And I think from that, that's the challenge, is moving it from just buying renewables to how do we up the additional or the additionality credentials of what we buy. But I think with that was the end of the slide pack. So if we go next slide, it should say, there you go, standard green tariff. And the next slide should be, thank you. So I'm available for questions, and I'm sure Emma will be working that one.
Hi, David. It's Hayley. I'm coming over the mic. I'm going to take any questions from the audience for you.
Lovely.
Anyone in the room got any questions at all for David? Any online that we picked up on? Oh yeah, go on then. Okay.
Stupid. I think this might be a daft question, David, and I may look very stupid. But if you want to buy renewable energy, buy renewable energy because it's the right thing to do, and just pay for what it costs when you buy it. Just pay, don't have to do all those complex things. Just make the decision to buy green renewable energy, and term. Don't worry about the term. Just buy it at market rate, and there'll be competitive options out there that you can. The bloke on the telly will switch you apparently in 24 hours.
Yes.
So I've probably oversimplified and been very daft, but it seems to have got rather complicated.
It's a fair question, and it is complicated, especially when people want to say, oh, it's additionality. So that's one of the little nuances that comes up. But for a corporate, we want to make sure we've got budget certainty, and we use flex purchasing within a framework. So we fix out in 12 months. So the traditional model does what you say. You buy it at the as and when you need it, but you still have to give an idea of what you want to buy. Your supplier will then go out and book that energy for you at an agreed price that they will then sell to you. So there is a risk of just buying it as you go along. And what for renewables, we're saying actually buy the energy in the traded market, but make sure that we've matched off our annual consumption with regos to the same consumption level. And that's very much the traditional model. It's done at, the thing to remember is it's done at annual level, not half hour by half hour as you go along. So it wasn't a daft question. And sometimes the people who buy energy forget that sometimes it's just a simple question, and we make it very complicated because we know the details. But that's there. Hopefully that's helped.
Yeah, and hello everyone. My name's Jack Rankin. I work in the smart generation team, so I work with some of our I&C colleagues here at Smartest in terms of helping them get some generator partners to help with corporate PPAs, and I just want to add a little bit to that. So our I&C colleagues come to me and say, we've got I&C customers who want to do this, what's it going to cost them? And in line with what was on the Baringa slides earlier, really we have lots of solar generators who we have strong relationships with already who want to build out, and they're looking in terms of, what tenor and price do they need to be able to go on a project. And really we've got suites of those now at the kind of £45 to £50 level for a 10-year cost. So if you're thinking about some of those lower, medium, high, cases of potential commodity prices over the next 10 years, that's often now at a discount to some kind of midterm views. So if you're a I&C supply customer of Smartest and want to discuss those kind of options, they're the kind of levels that we can talk about. And they're the levels really which give them enough secure revenue in order to build their projects at the levels that they require. Hope that's helpful.
And Jack, what sort of lead time are we talking about?
Yeah, so if you came to me, I could get you a kind of anonymized grid of assets, which would be in different places in the country if locations important to you, with different indexations, different tenors, and really they can be most generators have got a suite of shovel-ready projects, and some of those can start from in 12 months' time, and I typically can show you ones that are Q2, Q3, Q4, kind of next year.
So April next year.
Yeah, I'd say so. That's the kind of that'd be the earliest. So we'd be talking 12 to 18 months for a shovel-ready site to be able to get that sleeved into a supply agreement.
Okay, interesting, because again, with the additionality debates, a lot of people are saying you've got to do it and you've got to do it now. It's like, yeah, I'm using energy now, so I want to have the renewable energy criteria of credibility of what I'm using now, but I also want to be looking ahead about when I'm going to do it. So actually knowing that it might take 18 months from when we start talking about it, and I presume you mean actually signing on the dotted line, to actually the power flowing into the contract, that's a good time to know. And I think James had a lovely quote about the Tesco one. My favourite quote about PPAs is, "It's not for the faint-hearted." And over time, certainly initially, it's very off-putting, the amount of legal clauses that you have and how complex it is. Things are getting simpler, more standardized, but it's still a barrier to entry for anything other than the bigger corporates. So those are the big challenges that as a mid-range corporate buyer I'm looking at. It's the credit ratings, it's the scale of it, and it's the legal complexities of what the term contracts look like and the arrangements. So not saying we can't do it, but it's not something that is business as usual. It's everyone's having to upskill and work out what to do, take specialist advice, and it makes it trickier to get through and onto the board and get a decision, favourable decision.